So, something pretty huge just happened to the way India sees its own economy. We're talking about a massive statistical reset, a fundamental change in how the country measures something we all feel every day: inflation. We're going to break down exactly what this means.
And it all kicked off with this one number, 2.75%. This was India's retail inflation for January 2026, and it was the very first figure to come out of this brand new system. But trust me, this number is just the tip of the iceberg.
Because what we're really talking about here isn't just a single data point. Think of it more like a complete upgrade to the country's economic operating system. It's a total recalibration of how India measures the cost of living in an economy that is changing at lightning speed. Now, to really get why this new system is such a big deal, we have to look back. We need to understand what was so broken about the old one. Why was this huge change so desperately needed?
Well, it all comes down to something called the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. This is basically the main tool we use to measure retail inflation, the change in the cost of stuff we buy every day. And it's incredibly important because it's the number one metric the Reserve Bank of India looks at when deciding on monetary policy. We're talking about things that directly affect you, like interest rates on your loans and your savings.
The problem was the old system was based on data from way back in 2012. It was looking at today's India through a decade-old lens. It had this massive digital blind spot. I mean, think about it. It completely missed the boom in online shopping, streaming services, 5G data plans, the whole digital revolution. It was still tracking the prices of things like DVDs and audio cassettes. I mean, seriously, it just wasn't reflecting modern Indian life at all. And here was one of the biggest issues: the outsized weight of food. In the old CPI, food and drinks made up almost 46% of the entire index. So what does that mean? It means a temporary spike in, say, tomato prices, something monetary policy can't really fix, could completely distort the inflation picture and basically force the RBI to react.
So to fix all of this, India's statisticians built a brand new compass, a modern tool for a modern economy. Let's take a look under the hood of this new CPI and see what makes it so much better.
And when you put the old and the new side by side, wow, the changes are huge. The base year jumps from 2012 all the way to 2024. The weight of food drops from that massive 46% down to just under 37%. The basket of things being tracked is bigger and way more relevant. And maybe one of the biggest changes? Data collection has finally gone digital. Let's break down these upgrades because they're pretty significant. First, that expanded basket now includes things we actually spend money on, like Netflix subscriptions and stuff we buy online. Second, they're collecting price data from way more places, both rural and urban. Third, using digital tools for data collection just means it's faster and a whole lot more accurate. And finally, by adopting global standards, it makes India's data much easier to compare with other countries. Now, this whole thing wasn't just done on a whim. This was a serious, well-thought-out process. A dedicated expert group with people from the RBI, top universities, and government ministries guided this entire revision to make sure it was robust, thorough, and ready for the real world.
Okay, so we've got a new, shiny, modern statistical tool. But so what? What does this actually mean for the economy? And more importantly, why should any of this matter to you? The impact is actually huge. For the RBI, it means they get a much clearer, less jumpy inflation signal. This gives them more breathing room to make smarter interest rate decisions. For millions of government employees, their cost of living allowances will now actually reflect what people are spending money on today. It also seriously boosts India's economic credibility and helps the government plan better for things like welfare programs. And hey, don't just take my word for it. India's chief economic advisor, V. Anantha Nageswaran, put it perfectly. He said that because the new CPI basket is aligned with reality, the inflation signals are much better match for the actual economy, and that means better information for making big policy decisions.
But, with any massive overhaul like this, it's not all smooth sailing. This is a huge leap forward for sure, but the new system comes with its own set of challenges and debates. The journey isn't quite over. So that brings us to the big question. Is this new system perfect? Well, not quite. Experts are already pointing to a few hurdles that we need to keep in mind as we move forward with this new framework.
For starters, this creates what's called a time series break. It basically makes it tricky to compare today's inflation with data from many years ago. There's also a debate about that lower food weight. Some argue that for the poorest households, food costs are still a massive deal. And, challenges still exist in capturing spending patterns in rural India and figuring out how to deal with online prices that can change by the minute.
So what's the way forward? How do we keep this new compass calibrated? Well, experts pretty much agree on a few key things. First, make these updates a regular thing, every 3 to 5 years, so we never fall this far behind again. Second, be super transparent about how it all works. And third, keep investing in the infrastructure, especially when it comes to gathering data from rural and digital markets.
Look, this new CPI is a much, much better compass for navigating the economy. It gives us a clearer view of what's happening. But it also leaves us with a really critical question for the future. In an economy that's evolving as fast as India's, how do we build a system that's not just playing catch-up, but is actually ready for whatever comes next?